Alright, so we're finally back to Yoma. Our daily Gemara, we're in Ayin Zayin Amud Aleph 77a. And we are holding after the square brackets. There's a colon, it's about a third from the bottom of the page. The line begins with the word ba, oi oi, v'leka da ashkachabe, end of brackets, colon, and then vibois ema. You see it, Robert? You got it? Okay, so the Gemara is essentially discussing the 5 different items that constitute inui. The Torah says, with respect to Yom Kippur, 5 times that we should engage in inui, which means we should engage in affliction or self-denial. The Torah says that 5 times with respect to Yom Kippur. And the Gemara explains that this is a reference to 5 different ways in which we deny ourselves in Yom Kippur. Eating and drinking is one, creams and ointments, showering, shoes, and intimacy, marital relations. And the Gemara is going through each one of these and proving from verses elsewhere that each of these items are referred to as inui, as self-denial. With respect to eating and drinking that came from Vayancha Vayarivecha, with respect to the manna, God says, and I afflicted you, and I made you hungry, means I denied you food until you had the manna. And that's how we know that not eating means self-affliction, self-denial. And from there the Gemara went in a whole discussion on the manna. And then the last thing was how we know that washing and anointing or refraining from those things are referred to as inui, as self-affliction, because Daniel, in preparation for his prophecy, says that he didn't sach loy sach, he didn't put any ointments on himself. And when he has the prophecy, the angel tells him, you denied yourself well, using again this word inui, thus implying that all the preparations he did were all part and parcel of inui, including sach loy sach, including not putting ointments. Now that explanation was a bit ambiguous because the Gemara there included washing as well. He said, sach loy sach, I didn't anoint myself, I didn't put any ointment on myself in preparation for the prophecy, along with not eating and not. And the Gemara says he didn't put anything on himself, not ointments, nor water. So it's implied, but it's not as explicitly understood. Because the words the Torah uses there, the words Daniel uses there, sach, is to anoint, not actually to bathe. So the Gemara is going to revisit the issue of finding somewhere else in Scripture where denying oneself from washing is referred to as inui, referred to as self-affliction. Clear?
Maybe it could be that it wasn't customary to anoint oneself until after bathing.
Right, which would mean,
oils on yourself.
Yeah, if that's the case, then that could be he denied himself by bathing, but instead of putting the ointments after he bathed, he didn't.
Yeah,
right? It's the way the Gemara reads it is he didn't put anything on his body. Not ointments and not water. But it's not as exact. It's the broad definition of not putting anything on a skin. But it's not as clearly stipulated that washing is considered affliction. And that's what the Gemara is going to address now. And then it's going to address the next one, not wearing shoes. And then the next one, marital relations. And then it's going to get to the details of the halachas of these various different items on Yom Kippur. So the Gemara says like this: Ibois ema, should you wish, you can suggest the fact that refraining from washing on Yom Kippur is referred to as inui, referred to as self-denial. Minalon, from where do you know this? Bahacha, we can derive it from the following verse. This is a verse it's in Divrei Hayamim, right? It's in the book of Kings. Kings 1, chapter 2, verse 26. And there, the story is Shlomo HaMelech is already king. King Solomon is king. His mother Bathsheba, who sits by him, is kind of an advisor to him. And was it Avis? No, Adoniyahu. Adoniyahu comes to the mother and says, asking her, can you please ask your son the king to give me Avishag as a wife? And it seems it was part of a ploy for him to try to usurp the kingdom from Shlomo HaMelech because he's his older brother. So when Bathsheba comes to her son Shlomo Melech and presents him with his older brother's request to have Abishag as a wife, Shlomo Melech understands the ploy and essentially says, this is the kind of request that should cost you your life. And he says now about, I think it's Adonio, right? One second, we'll get to it in a second. But this is the verse right here is talking about that. And along with Adonio, his compadres were Yoav and Avisar, two very powerful people. Yoav, the leading of the army, and Avisar, the Kohen. So Shlomo Melech says, you, Adonio, you're deserving of death because of this request. Now, as for you, Ula Avisar HaKohen Amar Melech, and to Avisar the Kohen said the king Shlomo Melech, Avisar, who is conspiring with Adonio to take away the kingdom from Shlomo. So to you, Avisar the Kohen, says the king Shlomo, Anoises Leich Sadecha, go to Anoises, your fields, meaning run away from here. Ki ish mavis ata, because you are a man worthy of death for conspiring with someone who wants to take away the throne from me. But today I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to show mercy on you. Why? Because you carried the Aron, you carried the ark together with my father David. When was that? Tells us Rashi, this was when Avshalom, another one of King David's sons, who during King David's lifetime, towards the end of his lifetime, tried to overthrow David from the kingdom, rebelled, Avshalom. And during that time, Avisar stuck by King David. Now he's with Adonio, the other one of King David's sons, fighting against Shlomo Melech, or conspiring against Shlomo. But during David's lifetime, he stuck with David even during the time of the rebellion of Avshalom. And therefore King Shlomo says, because you were loyal to my father during the rebellion of Avshalom, and you carried the Aron while my father was running away, and King Shlomo says, and you afflicted yourself in all the afflictions my father did. This is the Kohen.
So I thought only the Levi's are
carrying the Aron, extraneous circumstances, because he's under battle. They had to protect it from Avshalom, right? So I suppose ordinarily he didn't, but under these circumstances he did. But what do we see from here? When Shlomo Melech is sparing Avisar's life, he tells him, why am I sparing your life? Because you stood by my father with Avshalom. And when you stood by my father during the battle of Avshalom, he mentions two things. Number one, you carried the Aron. And number two, you afflicted yourself with all of the afflictions of my father. We see from here that the verse describes David's experience in running away from Avshalom as an affliction, using this term, inui. So now, let us see what was the actual afflictions of King David, and then we'll know what's referred to as inui. Clear? Shlomo Melech is calling the experience of David running away as Isanisa, as affliction, and that's why I'm sparing you, Avisar, because you, Avisar, also afflicted yourself with my father. So then when we know what David did when he was running away, we know what affliction is. So Avisar is the Kohen Gadol who was loyal to King David, but when Shlomo Melech took over, he sided with Adonio, one of the other sons of David. Right, but it continued afterwards. So who was it here? So it wasn't Adonio, it was somebody else. No, sorry? Right, so who here is Avisar with? Right, but here he's with somebody else. So who was it?
He was with Adonio, part of the revolt.
Right, but who was the one that asked Shlomo Melech for the Avishag was Adonio, who asked for this wife? I'm pretty sure this is Adonio. I understand, but Adonio survived into Shlomo Melech's kingdom, did he not? There's somebody else here that Avisar is conspiring with, and that's why Shlomo Melech wants to kill him. I thought it was Adonio. We'll look it up afterwards. We'll correct it. But here, I looked up the verses, and the verses here is Shlomo Melech his mother comes with a request from Avisar, and Shlomo Melech realizes it's only because Avisar is trying to side with. Shlomo Melech's mother Bathsheba comes with a request from someone who's trying to be king, Shlomo Melech's older brother. And as a result of that, he gets rid of them, including he says, Avisar, run away. I understand that. But there's somebody else. there's somebody else. There's one of Shlomo's older brothers who is trying to become king. And I thought it was Yo. Maybe it's somebody else. Sorry? Avisar the Kohen is siding with one of Shlomo's older brothers. Yes. I'm pretty sure it's Yo, but maybe I'm not remembering correctly. Okay, the bottom line is that Shlomo HaMelech tells Avisar that when you were running away from my father, you afflicted yourself with all my father's afflictions, using this term inui, and therefore, when we know what David did when he was running away, we'll know what affliction means. We'll know what inui means. So let's see. V'ksiv be'be David, and it said with respect to David in the book of Samuel 2, chapter 17, verse 29, it says that they didn't eat. They didn't have any. They brought to David honey, butter, sheep, and cattle. And why? Ki amru, because they said, ha'am rav v'ayef v'tzama. The people are hungry, tired, and thirsty, b'midbar in the desert. And this is why they were brought food. So what's the affliction? Hunger, thirsty, and tired. So what does tired mean? This is the big question. So explains the Gemara. Rav, they were hungry, clearly melechem, from bread, from food. Some of they're thirsty from what? Mimayim, from water. But ayef, what does tired mean? This is the third element of David's affliction when he's running away. Hunger, thirst, and tired. What's this tired? The Gemara does that wouldn't satisfy the context, because the context there is they brought to David stuff because they were lacking in these things. So what were they lacking that he's bringing? They're not bringing to him rest. It doesn't say that. So the oyev, the tired, has to be something for which the people who are bringing him things are satisfying his tiredness. So what's the tiredness? Oyev mimai, tired from what? My love. Is it not? Merechitza, from washing. And they brought him water to wash. So they brought him honey and butter and sheep and cattle because they were hungry and thirsty. And they brought him water also because he was tired from washing, because he hadn't washed. Now if that's the case, then when the verse says that King David was under affliction, and included in the list of things he denied himself was washing, we know that washing is to be considered affliction. And if when the Torah says afflict yourself on Yom Kippur, it means don't wash. Clear? It says the Gemara V'dimel perhaps, sorry?
Doesn't mean ritual washing.
No, it means bathing. Not ritual washing, bathing, washing yourself, literally. Showering, bathing. It says the Gemara V'dimel perhaps, when it says that David was tired, it doesn't mean he was tired from washing and bathing, but rather tired, meaning ilas hasandal, he was tired from not wearing shoes. And that would be the other one of the afflictions that we are supposed to inflict upon ourselves in Yom Kippur. Elamar Rabbi Yitzchak says no mahacha. There's a following verse is going to show us that being tired is a reference to washing. How do we know that being tired is a reference to washing? Because the verse says in Mishlei, in Proverbs chapter 25 verse 25, Mayim kardim al nefesh ayefa, like cold water on a tired soul. What does this mean, cold water on a tired soul? Dilma mishtiya, maybe a tired soul who's thirsty, and now you're getting it water. Says the Gemara, no. Miksiv bin nefesh ayefa. Does it say like cold water in a tired soul, which is what you would do when you were drinking? Al nefesh ayefa ksiv. It says cold water on a tired soul. So the tired soul is lacking cold water on it. So now let's work backwards. Here the verse says that tired means you're lacking water on you, you're lacking bathing. And it says King David was tired when he was running away. And King Solomon says that when my father was running away, it was referred to as affliction. Thus we know affliction refers to being tired, and being tired means lack of washing. And thus we deduce that when the Torah tells us to afflict yourself, to deny yourself on Yom Kippur, using the term inu, it means don't wash. Clear? Okay. What time is it? Do we have time for one more? Yeah? Okay. Now, where do we know? Now we have to go through the same process with respect to not wearing shoes on Yom Kippur. That's one of the ways in which we deny ourselves of not wearing leather shoes, or not wearing shoes. Non-leather shoes are not called shoes, halachically. So we're not wearing shoes on Yom Kippur. How do we know that that's considered denying yourself? How do we know that it's called inui? So we're continuing using the same system of King David's self-affliction during runaway from Avshalom.
Actually, wearing dress shoes
Is more uncomfortable.
than wearing running.
Yeah, I know. It's not a question of subjective comfort and discomfort. It's a question of what the Torah classifies as self-denial. Right? And if the Torah classifies not wearing shoes as self-denial, whether you find it comfortable or not comfortable is not relevant. The point is the Torah calls it self-denial. Right?
So, by the way, there are opinions about, like you're saying, that some are strict in this way, but any kind of comfortable shoe is considered a shoe as well.
Okay, that's an extension. That if you're wearing, they don't say that you're allowed to wear uncomfortable leather shoes. They say that if you're wearing comfortable sneakers, you shouldn't because it's not considered self-affliction. But no one's going to tell you that because leather shoes are uncomfortable, you're allowed to wear them on Yom Kippur. No one's going to say that. They're only going to extend it farther and say that don't wear sneakers because sneakers are comfortable. That maybe, but not the other way. At any rate, okay. So we're going through the same process as we did with the washing. We established that whatever King David underwent during runaway from Avshalom is considered self-affliction. And we've established that one of those things was being tired, and we established that being tired means he didn't wash. Now we're going to demonstrate a verse which demonstrates that while King David was running away from Avshalom, he didn't have shoes either. And now that we know he didn't have shoes, we can add that to the list of things we can add that to the list of afflictions that King David experienced. Thus, add that to the list of our afflictions we need to experience on Yom Kippur because the same term inui is used. Clear? So let's see where it says by King David. It says, "David oila b'mala hazesim." King David was going up the mountain of olives. Oila uboicha. He's going up and crying. V'roishei loy chafoi, and his head is like he's down. V'hoilech yachif, and he's going. Yachif means open, or it literally means barefoot, but it means like the way you say this barefoot is. I'm saying specifically not barefoot because the Gemara is going to try to explain the word yachif elsewhere in a different way. Yachif literally means like open or without covering. So says the Gemara, yachif, without covering mimai from what? Lav min l'sasanda does not mean that he didn't have shoes; he was barefoot. And therefore, when the verse says that King David was going up the mountain yachif without clothing, it means he was going up without shoes, and that would be on the list of his affliction. And therefore, Yom Kippur would also be considered self-afflicting. Says the Gemara, but maybe, Vidilma, perhaps, misusia umi ratka, I'm not sure how you pronounce this word, but perhaps it means, not that it was empty, he was lacking shoes, but he was lacking his horse and whip. So he was yachuf, he was empty, not of shoes, but of horse and whip. Says the Gemara, no. El Amar of Nachman bar Yitzchak, of Nachman bar Yitzchak says, Mahacha, I'm going to bring a different verse which proves to you that the words yachuf, the words empty, means empty of shoes rather than empty of horse and whip. Why? Because the verse says with respect to Isaiah, God tells Isaiah, Leich tu pitachta sak me'al masnecha, go take off the cloth that you're wearing on your chest, and take the shoes off your feet. This is what Hashem tells Yeshaya. The Ksiva in the verse reads, Vayaskeh, that indeed Isaiah followed through with God's command. Halach arum, he went around naked, because God told him to take off his cloth. V'yachif, and he went empty, again using this word yachif. Yachif memai, empty from what? Lav, is it not? Meaning it's a sandal, that he took off his shoe, because God told him to take off your shoe. So God told him two things. Take off your shirt. Corresponding to that, the next verse says that Isaiah was naked. God says, take off your shoes. Corresponding to that, the next verse says that Isaiah was yachuf, was empty of shoes. And thus when the verse says that King David was yachuf, it also means empty of shoes. Or barefoot. Says the Gemara, but ve'ema, perhaps this doesn't mean that he actually was barefoot. But rather, the mina'olim hamutuloyim. He was wearing raggedy shoes or patched shoes instead of proper shoes. Not that he was actually barefoot, but he wasn't wearing proper shoes. They were patched shoes. And what's the proof? If you're not going to tell me that taking off shoes does not mean fully taking off shoes in terms of what God told Isaiah, but rather it means take off comfortable shoes and put on patched shoes, you must accept that that's what it means, because the verse says that Aram, he was naked. Adam Mamish, was he literally naked? Obviously not. Ela begadim bluyim, but he wasn't wearing fancy clothing. He wasn't wearing nice clothing, clean clothing. So when the verse says naked, it doesn't mean literally naked. It means he wasn't wearing fancy clothes. And then when the verse says that he was lacking shoes, it doesn't mean he was lacking shoes completely. It means he was lacking good shoes. If that's the case, King David also could have been wearing shoes, just not maybe not good shoes. If that's the case, you would be allowed to wear shoes in Yom Kippur, just not good shoes. Because that's the term affliction here. Following? Elam Nachman therefore says, Amar Rav Nachman says, Mahacha from here. This is a verse in Yirmiyah, and God's telling him that when you're going to go into exile, you should keep the following instructions. Mani raglecha mechev, stop your shoes from make sure your feet are not barefoot. V'gernecha mitzameh, and make sure your throat isn't thirsty. This is what God's telling Yirmiyah before he goes into exile. Make sure you got your shoes, and make sure you're well hydrated. Explains the Gemara that God's not giving him literal advice that he should have shoes and not be hydrated, but rather like this. Make sure you don't sin, so that you don't end up being barefoot as a result of your sin. Guard your tongue from speaking vanity or nonsensical waste of time words, so that you consequently, as a result of your sin, will not end up being thirsty. But what's the point here? The main point here is that Torah, the verse uses the term mechaf, yachef, being empty of clothing, in reference to not wearing shoes. And therefore, that's what the verse says by Yirmiyah. Mechef, make sure your feet are not yachef, make sure your feet are not barefoot. And therefore, when the Torah says that King David was yachef, running away from Avshalom, it means he was barefoot. And therefore, because King Shlomo says that whatever David went through, running away from Avshalom, is called self-affliction, therefore we know that self-affliction on Yom Kippur also includes not wearing shoes. God willing, Monday, we'll get to how we know refraining from intimacy is considered self-denial on Yom Kippur, and then we'll get to some detailed halachas with respect to the various different items that we're not allowed to do on Yom Kippur. Good day and a good Ner Shabbos.